Once or twice before on the show, we've talked about the plight of the most trafficked animal on the planet, the pangolin. And if you can believe it, the situation over the past few months, I should say, while it's obviously gotten a lot rougher for humans, it's also gotten pretty bad for them. And joining us now to talk about the current situation, how it intersects with the pandemic, as well as what's being done to protect this, much targeted animal, the co-founder of Animalia, James Veraldi, joins us now. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Before we get launched into it, a lot of people are not going to be familiar with this animal species. Can you tell us a little bit about why it's in the position it's in right now, why it's being so targeted internationally?
Sure. The pangolin poaching has been going on for a long time. The meat of a pangolin is one half of it. The scales are the other part of it. The meat has been, commonly consumed in both African and Asian cultures for a long time. The scales have been used in a lot of traditional African and Asian medicines, particularly Asian medicines and Chinese medicines. And I think the reason you're seeing such a big spike is as we've cracked down successfully, although still a lot of work to do on things like ivory and rhino horns. Pangolins have they haven't had the same protection. They're a lot harder to protect, which we can talk about for different reasons. You've seen them kind of fill some of that gap. But to be clear, they've been poached for a long time. They've been used in a lot of traditional ways in a long time. But I think with the crackdown of other species and materials, you're seeing pangolins spike.
Why exactly do you think that protections for them haven't taken off? Like you hear people talk about elephants, they talk about rhinos and things like that. Is it because they're smaller? Is it because I would guess a lot of people aren't even aware that this species exists, and it seems bizarre to me because just superficially they're incredibly cute. That seems like the sort of thing that usually gets humans invested in a species. But while there's been a number of different documentaries and films made about this, there's organizations that work in this area. Do you see progress on raising awareness about this?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely progress, but to answer your question of why, kind of all the above that you pointed to. So on one hand, on the conservation and the field work, pangolins are very, very hard to locate. They're solitary animals. They're very, we don't know as much as we do about elephants and rhinos and lions and some of the other common wildlife that we often refer to in the world of trafficking and poaching. They're very reclusive. They're very shy. And the reason poachers have such an easy time sort of trapping them and finding them, where conservationists have a harder time, is because they use traps and harmful things because obviously they don't care about the pangolin's welfare. So they can set up a lot of snare traps and things like that. Conservationists can't use the same techniques. And so by nature, poachers have an easier time getting to pangolins than conservationists. And then on the other side of it is funding. They have not been as celebrated from a media standpoint. They aren't as widely known. There aren't as many dollars that go around. A lot of people donate to elephant rescue, rhino rescue, because those animals have been in our pop culture. They've been in our movies. They've been in our kids' books. They're sort of ingrained in culture. Although I would argue that, elephants are ingrained in culture because a lot of the abuse and captivity as well. So it's a double-edged sword. But with pangolins, they're not as ingrained, especially in Western culture, where a lot of conservation funding comes from. And so as a result, there's not as much funding that has historically gone around either. But they are getting their moment. That is changing. We just held a digital pangolin conference at the end of last week, and we're able to raise over $10,000 from that event. So it's getting better, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that. You co-ran this with another organization. I know that you were involved in actually running it. What is some of what was discussed? Are there new initiatives? Was it mainly designed to raise money, to raise awareness? What's some of what went on at the event?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. So we had sessions talking about particularly sort of a Pangolin 101 and the link to COVID-19, just sort of debunking any the correct information, making sure people are aware of that. We had sessions around why the work in the field is so hard with pangolins. Wild Aid presented all the work they're doing to change cultures in China, working with big celebrities and influencers to sort of make it more taboo. We got to see rehabilitation work with actually live pangolins in 2 of the sessions, one in Nigeria, one in Singapore. So we had a kind of pretty good flavor of a lot of the, sort of different topics touching pangolins to just give people more awareness of what's going on.
Yeah. And you mentioned there the connection with the pandemic. So I'd read 1 or 2 articles about that people appeared to believe that it was pangolins that had actually initiated the transfer of COVID-19 to humans. So far as we know, that's not based on anything accurate, right?
Well, the possibility is based on accurate, and that's because there is a high percentage match in the RNA strand of the coronavirus with another coronavirus that has been found in pangolins. Whether or not we know that it was at some point it transferred from a wild species to humans, and whether it was a pangolin or whether it was a bat, whether it was a bat that bit a pangolin, that part of it, we don't have concrete evidence of. We might never. I mean, some of these, viruses in these pandemics, we never fully get the sort of, origin story totally correct. But we know it was transferred from wildlife. We know pangolins have that high match, and we know pangolins are consumed in wet markets such as the one in Wuhan. So we know it's a very high possibility, but it's not guaranteed. But there's a high possibility of it based on science.
Okay, and is sort of the fear that if people came to associate this species that many of them are not going to have a wealth of information about with the pandemic, that there might be damage to the effort to get people to care about conservation and about ending the trafficking?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what you don't want is people saying, okay, well, if pangolins are connected to this, let's get rid of pangolins.
Yeah.
Because that would be incredibly unjust in the sense that it's really, we should just get rid of pangolin trafficking. If we kept pangolins in the wild where they belong, where they do serve a role and value in their ecosystem, we would never have these issues to begin with.
Yeah.
And look, if we don't stop wildlife trafficking in general, we're gonna run into more pandemics. We're gonna deal with these things again and again.
Yeah. If someone watching this wants to be involved in responsible conservation efforts to combat the trafficking, what are some of the things that they can do?
Yeah, so they range, from all the way from just sharing the right information, right? I mean, not everybody can donate. Not everybody can donate, money or time, or their skills. But you can always share. You can always make sure the right information is getting out there. The right organizations are getting support. The right messaging is out there. So that's step one. And you can take that all the way through action. You can take that through, supporting the organizations on the ground, the field workers, donating to ones that, you feel particularly attached to. There's also work just done. It all depends on where you are in the world. There's parts of the world where you can be part of changing the culture of the consumption of these of wildlife. And it's not that the U.S. is part of this issue as well. There are actually, pangolin cowboy boots made out of pangolin scales that are shipped and sent in the U.S. through black market means. And so it's also if you come across those, you need to denounce them. You need to sort of call them out. So there are things everybody can do.
I had not been aware of that. That is really something. Well, James, I want to thank you for joining us and, fighting the good fight. Hopefully more people will become aware of this. I know there's obviously a lot going on, but we can't forget these ongoing, long-standing crises in the middle of the issues of the day. And we want to thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.